This morning, so we will start with our invocation and pledge. I'm going to ask Chris Poteet to do some invocation, and Mark Holmes, please lead.
Please bow your head and pray with me. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for this cool fall weather that you've given us. Thank you for the opportunities that you've given us as members of a community, a giving community, service-oriented community. Thank you for this organization and the effort and the energy that we have and the passion for the community, and thank you for letting us be a part of that. Lord, be with our country, be with our city, be with our state and county, be with the leadership that we have, and grant them wisdom as we go through this season of choosing leaders. And Lord, just again, help us to be thankful and help us to not take for granted all the blessings that we have each day. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in our pledge of allegiance to our flag and our country. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, sir. Any guests this morning? I know Mr. Jones has a few, but any other guests of the club? Yes, sir.
Shane Callahan. I'll spell the last name. Shane.
Shane?
Yeah, and the last name's Palahicki. P as in Paul. A-L-A-H-I-C-K-Y.
Welcome. Glad you're here.
Thanks. Greg Hardy.
Steve Brett.
David Griffin.
David? Thanks for being here. Any other guests this morning? Excellent. All right, a couple announcements. Early voting now through October 30th. So John Tregill, make sure everybody remembers, vote early and vote often. So that's going on now. So pay attention to that. Miss Carrie Jones, she has an announcement.
Okay. Can I introduce her?
Absolutely. Please do.
Can I just come out real fast? It'll take 2 seconds. I won't take a long time. Okay. It's easier this way.
Y'all gonna sing?
No, we're not.
You just have to pick the song. Oh.
Hi, I'm Carrie. I'm the principal at Lake Highlands High School. And so I just wanted to introduce some of the members of our admin team. I invited them to the breakfast this morning. They said yes, and then I eased in with the 7 a.m. And they still said yes. I'm excited about that. This is Casey Gray. We've worked together for 16 years. We started at Forest Meadow together. He was a brand new teacher. I was a brand new assistant principal. He is now our associate principal at Lake Highlands High School, so he's second in command. We'd be lost without Casey, so thank you, Casey. This is Kendall Hutchinson. We stole her from Mansfield ISD. She's actually moving down here anyway. She's a Moss Haven mom, a Forest Meadow mom, and a Lake Highlands High School mom. So she has a little bit at every school, and she is our assistant principal over academics. This is her 15th or 16th year in administration. 15th year in administration, so she's wonderful. This is Matthew Morris. I'm not getting too close. And Matthew is a Lake Highlands legend. You've probably seen him featured in the Advocate Center several times for his work with our AVID program. He was our AVID coordinator. Before that, he was a special ed teacher at Lake Highlands High School. And then last year was promoted to assistant principal, so this is his second year. And he is over our seniors and our advanced placement program. And this is Patrice Thomas. I stole Patrice from Liberty. We steal in fun. It's not bad. There's no real bad blood between the schools. But she was a campus reading specialist. She also did extensive work with AVID. And so this is her second year here. She's over our AVID program and science. So we're thankful to have Thomas. She's also a senior mom. Her daughter is at Richardson High School, so it's very nice. She kind of gives us the perspective of what the seniors are going through and their parents, so that we can make sure we're giving them what they need this year, because it's kind of a weird year for them. So thank you, Ms. Thomas. This is Daryl Oliver. Stole him from Berkner High School. Daryl, from Berkner High School. He was in IT with the district. They went back to Berkner. He's most recently their defensive coordinator. Offense I guess there's a difference. They were not happy when we took him, but he has been phenomenal, just working with our kids already and really making an impact and developing relationships. So this is his first year as an assistant principal, so we're thankful to have Mr. Oliver with us. I didn't steal him. He was with us last year as our P-Tech coordinator, got promoted to assistant principal, and so he is over our CTE programs and also P-Tech, which is a dual credit kind of program where kids can earn their associate's degree while going to high school and then come out with that experience and either go into a field, like into a trade, or go on to a four-year college. So we're very thankful for Mr. Shamsadine as well, and this is his first year, and he stays busy because he has little 2-year-olds. So sometimes I'm proud of him for making it here, because I know he's tired and he's busy. But this is the team. We also have Tommy Lambert. Stole him from Pierce High School. He was a math teacher and varsity soccer coach. Fun fact about Tommy, his big sister is Becky Stevens, who's the principal at White Rock Elementary. And then we also have Dr. Cody Ruffin, who's celebrating his 56th year in education. And so, drop the mic on that one. That I can say. We're very, very happy to be here. Happy that the school year started. We're going back with our second round of face-to-face kids on Monday. The second quarter begins there, and we're just really taking it day by day as we battle through COVID and work to keep our kids and our teachers safe. That's it. All right.
Thank y'all for being here this morning, and thanks for all you do for our kids. Bill Boyd.
You're doing great, Bill.
What are you singing for us?
Good morning, Lake Islands.
Morning.
All right, so I will be quick so we can get to the heart of the program. Coming up on Halloween, the district is doing their annual trunk or treat over by Tom Thumb. It's going to look different this year. It's going to be a drive-through trunk or treat. And Vicki Taylor with the Lake Highlands Pit has reached out to us for some creative and manpower help. So if you are creative or you like to build stuff, I need your help because I am neither creative and my building stuff tends to fall down quickly. So they want us to build an arch to signal the entryway for the drive-through trunk or treat, make it large enough for a vehicle to drive through and sturdy enough for a vehicle to drive through. So, Jacoby, yes, I do plan on tapping my neighbor's shoulder today. So if anyone is interested in helping me with that, please reach out and either call or email, and I will put you to work. We also are going to need some help with providing a trunk or two. I've reached out to a couple guys about maybe being captains and helping with that. So look for that to come out in email in the coming days. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Any other announcements this morning? All right. So I will have Michael Bailey come up along with our candidates, and we'll be going on the program.
Thank you, Robert. When I was asked to head up programming for the club this year, one of the very first things that popped into my mind was the potential opportunity to host this program. So I am incredibly excited to have these two here this morning to share with us their vision for the state. And I know from everything I've heard from the club members in the community that you guys are as well. So thank you very much to John and Lisa for being with us today. Of course, this is John Turner, Democratic nominee to my immediate right. And then on your left is Louisa Del Rosal, Republican nominee. So again, thank you both for joining us this morning, and more importantly, thank you for your commitment to our community and your interest in serving us in Austin. As far as the process this morning, each candidate will present an opening statement of no more than 2 minutes, followed by a series of questions. Each candidate will answer the same questions, alternating who fields the question first. Candidates will be given 90 seconds per question to respond. And then once the specific questions are done, each candidate will have a brief closing remark. Mr. Baisden here in the front row will raise the yellow paddle when the candidate has 15 seconds remaining, and the red paddle when the candidate has used their allotted time. So with that said, we conducted a coin flip this morning to determine the order of presentation, and based on that, Louise will be first to give your opening remarks.
I'm already going to be disrupted. I forgot my folder, so I'm already going to get gentlemen, I start the morning disrupting you. Thanks. Okay, so I start. Good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. My name is Luisa del Rosal. For those that can't pronounce it, I have now a new trick. Down like the computer, rows, all, some Texas rows for all, so Rosal, there you go. Now you won't forget it. I'll be in place 12 of your ballot. I'll be the only Luisa on the ballot, so find the hardest name, vote for her. This is my first time running for office. I'm new to politics. I'm not new to public policy. I actually am the executive director of 2 research centers at SMU, my alma mater, Pony Up, the best university in Texas. I know those are fighting words, so I'm very proud of it. My story really is about my roots and my wings. I'm from Mexico. I'm a first-generation American. I'm an immigrant, and Mexico gave me roots. My parents still live there, and my conservative values really come from my experience as an immigrant, because I've seen that alternative, because I've lived what is the difference between a free and fair society. So I'm super proud of where I come from, but I am even more proud of my wings. And Texas gave me wings. Texas is truly exceptional. We are not perfect, but gosh do we lead, and gosh are we bold, and gosh are we innovative. And Texans opened their arms to me, and I've done more than I could have ever imagined. And that's why I'm running. I'm running because I want to ensure that we continue to be the leading job creator. I want to ensure that we fully fund public education, but that we look at innovation in education. I want to make sure that we hold the line on taxes, that we deregulate where it's necessary, and that we have bold solutions for the actual problems of our community. And one of those is healthcare. When was the last time you heard a Republican talking about healthcare? That's a problem for me. We need to make sure we're having the conversations that matter for the people that we want to serve. I also represent the diversity and dynamism of the state. I don't say I'm the future of the Republican Party. I'm its present, and there's need to be more voices like ours. So I would love to earn your vote. I'm out of time. Thank you so much.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you here today. The club had a similar forum a couple of years ago that I was proud to participate in. When I was running for office to be your state representative for the first time. And I talked about, at that forum, the values of this club and how those would guide me as your state representative. And I want to talk about that for a second. What are the values of this club? Well, this club supports public education. This club supports students and teachers and regularly recognizes the great things that are going on in our public schools. This club supports our first responder community and our law enforcement community. It regularly recognizes our police and our firefighters for the service they provide. This club is there in times of need, and I will tell you, there have been a lot of those in the last 2 years with the devastating tornado we've had now, and this club shows up for those times. Well, I'm here to tell you, those values of this club have guided me as your representative in the last 2 years. In the last legislative session, I was able to pass bills related to public education to expand pre-K access. To pass bills, legislation that increased funding for children who are victims of crime. I was able to pass bills that better supported our first responder community and their families. The club's own Brad McCutcheon, by the way, was kind enough to come testify on one of those important bills that we were able to pass. And I was able to be involved in really one of the big successes that we've had in the Texas legislature in a while, and that is we actually increased funding for public education in a meaningful way. And also, at the same time, actually reduce our property tax rates. a win-win. And that record of service is one that I think I'm proud to stand on, and it reflects the values of this club. I'm proud of the broad support we have in this race. If I have the opportunity to serve you again, my commitment will remain to serve this community first in our state and our nation, and I look forward to the discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right. We're going to start with a little getting to know you question. Louisa, in which neighborhood in District 114 do you live, and where are some of your favorite places to spend time in our district?
That's a great question. So I live, anybody know the Cooper Clinic? I live right by the Cooper Clinic, so that is where I am. Again, I talked about Mexico and my roots, so I love Mesoamerica. I really, really do. It's still a guilty pleasure. Even as I try to better my diet for this race, still my guilty pleasure. That's when my husband uses the trail all the time to go to White Rock Lake. He's a great biker, so sometimes I follow him. And when I say follow him, maybe in the car, and I bring him there because I can't bike. I never learned to ride a bike. Isn't that shameful? Can you believe it? So those are, I think, of the two places. Blackpool Hill, I would think another beautiful place just to kind of get away from people. It's especially during this pandemic. I think we've all felt the disconnection that we're living this day and age. And I'm an extrovert at heart, so it's sometimes the only way that I would go to parks and see folks, even from a distance. So to me, this is another reason why I love this community, especially the Lake Highlands community. It's love the landscape. You know, it's so beautiful. We still have trees and hills, and I think that's some of the things that really inspire me. And I didn't grow up with. I grew up in the desert, so believe me, trees inspire me.
John, same question to you.
So I live in a little development neighborhood called Winter Park, which is right around the corner of Hillcrest and Walnut Hill. So you can't really say Preston Hollow. Some people might say that's Preston Hollow. Not quite. It's not Lake Islands either. It's kind of in between, a little small area right in between the two. And we've lived in our home there for the last 14 years. And that's where my kids have grown up. We live on a little cul-de-sac, and actually that's been a great thing, having two young boys grown up and riding their bikes and playing ball there in the cul-de-sac. There's a park not far away, Preston Hollow Park. It's actually not in my district, so it may not technically qualify for your answer, but we walk over there, and there's tennis courts there, and the family and I spend a lot of time over there. And we enjoy, the trails of the district, North Haven Trail. We are members over at JCC and take part in activities there. And North Park Mall is really close to where I am. I confess I'm not really a mall person, but there are those in my family that are. I want to go to the mall. And, we enjoy also getting over here to the Lake Islands. And actually, since I've been representative and been, involved all around the district, we've discovered so many places we like over here in Lake Islands. And we enjoy Flagpole Hill. My son's been in Boy Scouts and done activities there, planting some trees. And so we enjoy this entire area.
Great. Staying with you, John. From the standpoint of transportation and infrastructure, what is the biggest challenge facing the state right now? And what's the biggest challenge facing our district specifically? And how would you plan to address those?
Well, to tell you the honest answer to that question, the biggest challenge facing transportation right now is probably COVID-19. Now, how do I get to that answer? Well, we're going to be facing a serious revenue situation as a state in the coming legislative session because of the recession that's been created by COVID-19. And it's going to be a challenging recession from a revenue perspective. And so our ability to continue to fund important priorities like transportation for our state is going to be challenged. Now, there are many such needs, and this club well knows many of y'all have been involved in the effort to expand 635, long overdue, finally going to happen, long overdue. There are similar needs all across our city. Fortunately, the 635 expansion is still slated to go forward as planned, and we need to watch that to make sure that continues to happen. But in terms of other transportation funding, that is going to be something we are going to have to make some tough decisions about in the coming session. We want to prioritize public education. We want to prioritize health care, many important needs in our state. And so the question is, how much more can we do in the coming session? And that, I think, will be subject to a lot of tough decisions. decision making. One other thing I'll mention, the high-speed rail project from Dallas to Houston. That's something I support. I supported last session. Hope we can keep it on track in the next session as well.
Thank you. Louisa?
I think that, just to piggyback, our aging infrastructure, not just only here, but across the state. Texas has 80,000 miles of highways, more than any other state in the United States. And I think that as we're, to John, to your point, as we are riding more, we're not traveling as much in air, we're feeling the aging of our infrastructure. So 635 as well is an issue, and it continues, but to me, it's a larger look at what are we doing to invest for sustainability for the future, how are we making sure we can run more cleaner, better roads. I also support the project because we need to find faster ways to move because we are just more dynamic as an economy. So when I think about it, I run a center that focuses on Texas and Mexico, and 60% of the produce that comes into the United States actually comes from the Texas border, through the Texas border, and that's mostly being moved through our roads. So that's economy. That's our economy literally moving. So to me, when we look at it, it's not a place where I'm an expert in, but there's actually a lot of experts. And I think Adam Magoo here has been a real voice for transportation initiatives, especially at the city level. I think there's a lot of people in the Lake Highlands community that can help us look forward of, yes, it's going to be a tough budget session, but we look at the Texas economy, infrastructure is a critical need. I see it as where Texas goes, so goes the nation, and that includes us moving more efficiently through our roads and the investment we do in infrastructure.
Great. You both touched on competing priorities. When it comes to evaluating development in the district or infrastructure for our district, how do you go about evaluating an individual project? And what role would feedback from district residents play in that process? Yes, Louisa.
The role of this, constituents come first. We need to remember the service part of public service. This is where we need to listen of what are the priorities of the community in House District 114. And as I've been door knocking, the number one thing that comes up in doors is still property tax reform. Yes, I'm grateful for a little bit of relief, but as a homeowner, I haven't felt it. I still feel the burden of my property taxes. It's still half of my mortgage. So we need to find ways that even in the tough times, how do we get more relief, even given the pandemic, so people are not priced out of their homes and of their businesses. That's one that comes up. And then education is the second one. So that's a huge priority for this district. And we need to keep hearing about innovation. And we have two phenomenal school districts here that we need to hear from the voices. And I just want to shout out to the educators because it's such a noble profession. Thank you so much. Teachers change lives, administrators change lives. Thank you so much. I think they agree with me that innovation is so critical. And the other one that comes up a lot is healthcare. So as long as we continue to talking to the constituents, I would be a freshman. So I'm not saying I will never promise you that I can change everything, but I will be a squeaky wheel for you. Believe me, I have a very high voice and I will not stop using it.
I think the question goes, in a way, to the issue in the legislature these days of local control. Most of your local development projects are going to depend more heavily on city and county government. My view of state government in that regard is the state government needs to be a partner, a better partner, in fact, to our cities and our counties than it has been. My record in the last session as legislator was strongly pro-local control, supportive of our local governments. And as y'all know, there has been really an adversarial relationship that's broken out between the leadership of the legislature and local governments that never made much sense. These days, if you vote pro-local control, which means supporting your local governments and really supporting your police and your firefighters, you can sometimes get labeled a liberal in the Texas legislature. It's become that way. The surveys that are done put you as a liberal if you're supporting the traditionally conservative principle of local control. My view is the legislature needs to be supportive of our cities. Look at what's happened with respect to development. We talk about redevelopment in our district after the tornado. Who was there? Well, it was our EMS personnel, it was our firefighters, it was our police. The idea that we're going to handcuff the ability of local governments to make their traditional decisions in their traditional areas of authority on funding those kinds of local priorities is something I do not agree with. I think we need to be pro-local control in the legislature.
Great. Changing topics, but sticking with you, John. What steps would you take to maintain and strengthen our public education system? Do you believe we should make further changes to the way we fund education and how resources are allocated across the state?
Well, a great and important question. And, as I alluded to in my opening statement, we had a significant change for the better for public schools this last time. This club, many in this club actually supported, I remember Justin Bono coming to give a presentation about the tax ratification election for Richardson ISD, approving a tax increase of the M&O rate to $1.17. And many in this club supported that, and we were supportive of your public schools. Well, the good news is, in this last session, we were able to increase our per student funding to Richardson ISD and to school districts all across Texas. And at the same time, bring that tax rate back down from $1.17 to $1.06. Also, reduce the amount of money that is going out of the district through the recapture program or the drop-in program at the same time. So we made a lot of progress, and in addition, a lot of other substantive changes that I think improved and updated public education funding for school finance. In the next session, I view really the challenge is to continue that progress and to not pull back on it at this point in time. And we need to evaluate how it's going so far. The biggest challenge we're facing in schools right now, without a doubt, is probably most of you are experiencing in your own house, is COVID again, and the challenge of trying to figure out in-person, safe school, virtual school, which is not ideal, I can tell you that from personal experience, and figure out the right way forward to support our schools at this time of great need. But the priority is to keep the progress going and not go back.
Education, again, top topic that comes up with the constituents of 114, and it's a number one issue, honestly, for me, because I really believe that education is the number one equalizer. It's the reason I'm probably standing in front of you today. It's the one thing my parents gave me, and I want to make sure that I pay it forward by supporting that every child gets proper education. But that also goes with innovative solutions and looking at the growth of the child, not just looking at a test. And when we talk about funding, and yes, it's going to be a tough session, but we have to prioritize in the budget public education and education. I also, going to the issue, couldn't agree more on local control, because we have to let our trustees and our schools actually implement the solution that works best for y'all's kids. So talented and gifted programs, STEAM education, two-way dual language programs, trade programs. What do we need to do to ensure that every kid and every administrator and teacher is supported in the way that is best for that community? And I think the people that know best are the people in that community. So to me, I actually do think the Teacher Excellence Program in Dallas ISD has been innovative and bold. Their STEAM academies have been innovative and bold. And those are the things that the state needs to ensure that we keep supporting our local school boards and our local leadership, and to say, yes, if you're being innovative, there's the funding there for you. So we have to continue to push the lever, because Texas is failing our kids in education. We just are. We have to be honest. I think Texas is exceptional, but in order to stay exceptional, we have to look at the workforce of the future, and that is our children.
Thank you. Louisa, do you believe that Texas should expand Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act? Why or why not?
I do not.
And what other policies would you propose to allow Texans to better or more efficiently access health care?
I do not, and I want to make that super clear, because I think that's a point of distinction between us. The reason I don't is that I don't want to depend ever on the federal government. 9 out of the $10 from Medicaid expansion will come from the federal government. And I know my opponent will say, well, other states have done it. Well, Texas doesn't follow, Texas leads. And we need to find really reliable sources of funding. What happens if another Trump administration comes forward and they repeal ACA? What do we do with that budget shortfall? It's not that I don't want to expand coverage. I believe in funding the Texas Healthy Women Program. I believe in looking at CHIP. I believe in expanding access, but we have to do it in a sustainable way. So do we look at higher yield bonds for our rainy day fund and make sure that those dollars go into access for underserved women and underserved communities? I believe we have the expertise, and that Texas has the leadership in order to make a sustainable source of funding. We have it for transportation, we have it for water. Why can't we figure out for public education and for healthcare? So no, I do not support it. I think that we have to look at other avenues. One of the avenues that I look is that we spend so much billions of dollars in incarceration. Do you know that of the prison population, I think, and I might be correct, and I don't have the data, but I can look at it in front of me, I mean, 60% of those that are incarcerated because of drugs, it's because of possession, not distribution. I mean, things of that nature, and they're over 55, the population, the cost of their health care. We have to be innovative with where we cut in order to fund the things that are real priorities.
Well, this issue is a point of difference, and Ms. Del just said Texas leads. I agree Texas should lead. Unfortunately, one thing we are leading in, though, as a state right now, is in the number of uninsured people in the state. Not only as an absolute number, but as a percentage of our population, number one among 50 states. That's not good. Now, of course, it's not good for those who are uninsured, and it's not good for our overall health as a state, but it's also not good for everybody else as well. Because what we end up doing is paying all higher premiums to cover health costs for people who are uninsured. We end up paying also through our tax dollars, our property tax dollars, in supporting public hospitals that still provide treatment. The better system for everybody would be to have more people insured. And the best way to do that is to accept those federal dollars that are on offer to expand Medicaid in our state, which would also expand, by the way, the reach of mental health services, something especially important in this pandemic. You know, and I want to just say one word about why what I've said. I want to make a case that this is really the conservative position here. And by the way, in the past, the Texas Association of Business, not a flaming liberal organization by any means, supports Medicaid expansion. And the North Dallas Chamber of Commerce is supporting Medicaid expansion, from my understanding. 38 other states have done it, including all of our neighbors, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico. Texas should take advantage of this opportunity. It is, in my opinion, a prudent and fiscally conservative thing.
Thank you. John, this has already come up a couple of times, but as we continue to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, what do you think the state has done well in its response, and what do you think the state can improve on? And can or should any of these improvements be made through the legislative process?
Well, it's a critical question right now. It's on everybody's mind. Here's what I would say. First of all, every opinion I have about the COVID-19 situation is geared toward getting us back to normal, or as close to normal as possible, as soon as possible. Okay? Nobody likes the situation we have been in for the last month. It has been incredibly difficult, incredibly challenging. It's been challenging for small business. It's been challenging for our schools. It's been challenging for our just daily lives. In my opinion, there is one way that we get past all this most quickly, and that is to laser focus on reducing the transmission of this virus. I don't see any other way other than to get those numbers down as much as possible. Now, of course, we must do it in a smart way, not in a in a kind of broad brush way. All the restrictions should be justified by legitimate public health science health concerns. I do believe that as a state, we made a mistake at the level of our government, our executive state leadership, and really it has been the governor who's been in the driver's seat on this in numerous ways. First of all, with being very late to implement things like mask wearing. It was a long time before the governor could be brought forward to say that we should have mask wearing in the state. And there was mixed messaging about whether it be enforced. I do believe also, in many respects, we rushed our reopening in the summer, leading to a spike in cases that we haven't fully recovered from, and that's something we need to be conscious of as we go forward.
We have to follow the data, follow the science, and make sure that we're protecting our communities, but also we need to look at, small businesses are closing. When we talk about expanding access to care, for example, small business owners and their employees sometimes don't have that access to care because they're not allowed to pool their insurance, so they could get better premiums. Those are the type of innovative solutions that we need to look at the state level when we look at what can we do in the next session to be responsive and also to just prepare for the next pandemic. This is unfortunately how we're looking and our world is today. This probably will not be the last pandemic that we endure. So I think that that's where the Texas legislature needs to look at, again, what are innovative solutions in healthcare and be better prepared. And that's why I talk a lot about preventive care, and I talk a lot about what we can do with health and wellness so we're better prepared, honestly, to fight these viruses. This is why we need to ensure, please, everybody get your flu vaccine. These are the things that we need to talk about at the Texas legislature to make sure that there's accessibility to all. In terms of our response, I mean, we're all learning. I know you all are making tough decisions in your households, and that's how I see it. I think that you guys know what's best for your families, and then the government needs to just make sure they're to support what are the best decisions for your families. I do believe also that the mask mandate was a little late, but I do support the fact that we needed to reopen. We can stay shut down forever. We needed to make sure people can get back to work, and there's folks that didn't have an option. What about our first responders? What about those workers at restaurants? They needed a paycheck. So I think the mask mandate could have been put quicker, but I do support opening back up because our economy needs to keep moving. This is for the future. We can't stay stuck in this moment, in this crisis.
Thank you. Results from the 2020 census will be available early next year, and the legislature will then take up redistricting. Louisa, can you walk us through your approach to redistricting and how you would evaluate competing proposals?
This is something that comes up a lot, and I think that a lot of times is pulled and tugged in a partisan way, right? Redistricting is the reason why we want to keep the Texas House blue, red, flip, this and that, and I really think we need to get back to listening to constituents. What are we really doing to make sure that these congressional seats, the state seats, look like the communities they actually serve, that are actually made up communities that are close together? So my approach to it goes back to what are people really wanting? And I think that that's where I'm a little bit different, is that I am a different voice in the Republican Party, and I am a voice that wants to make sure that we're representing, and honestly, I'm also a person of color. So I want to make sure that communities of color are well represented by when we have these discussions about redistricting, and what are our communities look like, and what do those congressional or state seats look like that they represent really, like I said, the diversity and dynamism of our great state.
I didn't hear too much about an actual approach to redistricting in Ms. Dobersall's answer. What I will say is, first of all, I have supported an independent commission to draw district lines. I think the redistricting process in Texas, and frankly in a lot of states in the country, is actually just broken. We should not have a situation where every 10 years, because of the necessity of redrawing lines due to the changing population, where it becomes an occasion for elected officials to go back and just decide to pick their voters rather than having the voters pick the elected officials. That system hadn't worked for a long time. I mean, y'all remember what's happened in the last 2 episodes of redistricting in Texas. We had excitement like people going to Oklahoma and Arkansas, New Mexico to break the quorum. We had mid-decade redistricting, which was unprecedented. We had lawsuits that found intentional racial discrimination in the redistricting process. This has not been a good process. We need a different approach. Now, I'm not optimistic, unfortunately, that there will be support for an independent commission like some states have now adopted, that they will have that support in Texas. So I think the best we can do next session is to hope there is a good degree of balance in our state government, is to hope that people will not take an approach of gerrymandering as has happened in the past, either based on race or party or anything else, and do our best to draw fair, reasonable district lines. But it would be better ultimately if the process didn't work the way it does now, and we had a commission that drew these lines.
John, would any proposal that you have advocated for this morning or through the campaign require an increase in spending? If so, how would you fund that increase? And then from a budgetary standpoint, are there any other steps that you would take to strengthen the state's financial footing?
Well, if the question refers to looking forward, I've already talked about how we did increase spending for public education in the last session, and we're actually able to do so without increasing taxes, and in fact, bringing property taxes down from where they have been. That was a significant achievement. You know, as we look forward, we don't yet fully know what the revenue environment is going to be for Texas, other than we can already deduce that it's going to be challenging. You know, right now we are looking at potentially a $4.5 billion deficit for the current buy-in. That is, to just complete what we already appropriated to spend in the last session. And then on top of that, there's likely to be an estimate of further deficits upcoming for the next buy-in, but we don't know how much that is yet. At the beginning of the session, or near the beginning of the session, we'll get an estimate on that from the comptroller, and that will really govern a lot of our decision making. What I would say is, you know, in the last session, for the first time in a while, we were willing to go to the rainy day fund for significant expenditures. We took money out of the rainy day fund for retired teachers, for disaster relief, and for some other projects. I think we're going to have to look to the rainy day fund in this next session. And right now that fund is estimated to have a balance of almost $9 billion by the end of this fiscal year. If you go back to 2006, we never ended a fiscal year with a balance of over $1 billion in that fund. In a time of great need, when we need to avoid drastic and harmful cuts to education and healthcare, I do believe we need to look to that fund. It doesn't make sense to be hoarding money when our state has the needs it does.
Well, I think that number one, let's make something super clear. This is not the time to raise taxes. So that's something that I always want to start with. This is not the time to raise taxes. I actually definitely agree with the use of the rainy day fund. Thank God we've had Republican leadership, and thank God we've been so fiscally conservative, and we've refused to drain that rainy day fund. Last go around, I know my opponent was already talking about using the rainy day fund. I'm glad that we held the line and are making sure that when a rainy day came and a global pandemic is as rainy as it gets, is that we can use it, and we can use it to plug those holes. But we also need to see where can we deregulate so that small businesses can grow more, hire more people, and generate more revenue. That's the other solution that we need to keep looking at. And what are we doing for growth? Because that is a more sustainable way to get back our economy. So that's what, the rainy day fund for sure. The rainy day has hit. There is a limit actually of how much we can spend it down on. So that we're going to have to find other solutions, and that's where I think we also need to cut in our incarceration levels and look at this bipartisan criminal justice reform that could get some dollars back.
Great. We're running short on time, so we're going to skip to our last couple here. Louisa, District 114 is a diverse district in many ways, including its political leanings. Each of your parties likely has policies in its platform that may not have the support of the majority of District 114 residents. How do you balance the competing priorities of the party that nominated you versus the constituents of the district as a whole?
Well, because we're about people, and it's about values. I'm a Republican who's about values. The party doesn't come first. The values come first. And where I don't align with the party, I'll say it. Last night, I got the endorsement of the Log Cabin Republicans. They're the biggest LGBTQ group for Republicans and the fastest growing group in the Metroplex. I was really proud to stand with them to make sure we are reflecting a more inclusive community. The Republicans are really talking about freedom and justice and equality for all. So to me, again, the voters, the constituents will come first. We have to now get to a place where we're working across the aisle, because we as Texans, I really believe this, that we agree on 80% of things. And that's what I want to focus on. Not the 20% that might divide us, but the 80% that makes Texas exceptional. And that's all of y'all, and that's the people of 114, and that's solutions that come from the blue aisle and solutions that come from the red aisle. If it's what's best for Texans, let's have a conversation about it.
I think it's very important for a representative of this district to represent the entire district and to be a unifier. And I'll say, I've tried very hard to do that as your representative in these last 2 years. And I think that's reflected in the support that I have in this race. I'm proud to be supported by all the major law enforcement associations, first responder associations. The Texas Firefighters Association recognized me as their 2019 Champion of the Year in the legislature. And the Combined Law Enforcement Association of Texas recognized me as their Freshman of the Year. To me, that is unifying when you have law enforcement first responder associations support. It's important for me to not be a voice just for my party, although I am a Democrat, and I'm proud to be a Democrat. But I have not voted the party line in this session at all times. You need to be an independent voice for this district. Now, I will just have to tell you, to be plain, my opponent is trying to portray me through her mailers that she's sending out as some kind of radical socialist. And I actually have the evidence of that here, mailers in this notebook here. Some pretty unbelievable things that are being said. I want to assure you, I was honored to be your Grand Marshal in your 4th of July parade. You didn't pick a radical socialist to be your Grand Marshal in your 4th of July for this book. I believe it's important to make sure that you are representing the interests of this state and this party first. I'm sorry, the state first and this community first, and only afterward the party. That's a very important principle.
You have to address that because we sent a mailer that doesn't address the record and the voting. So if something else has been sent, hey,
Well, I'd be glad to show some if we
oh, let's do it.
Let's save that for after this.
Please come see me. I'd love to show you some.
And check who paid for it, because that's what matters.
We've talked about a number of issues today, but I want to talk priorities before we let you go. Aside from the budget and redistricting, what do you believe should be the #1 priority for the legislature in the upcoming session? And if elected, what would be the first piece of legislation that you personally plan to introduce? John?
Well, I'll start with that last question first. The first bill that I passed in the Texas House was a bill on improving health literacy. And it would have basically established a system and a commission to improve the way that we communicate health information to the public through doctors' offices, through continuing medical education, through employers. And it had bipartisan support, and it was in fact a top recommendation of our statewide health coordinating council. So it wasn't something I just made up all on my own. It did not pass, however, ultimately, because I think some decided it sounded, I don't know, too much like big government or something of that nature. Well, health literacy is a critical priority for our state. It's actually something that could save us health care costs. I mean, a lot of our health care costs in Texas are as a result of poor health knowledge and literacy in our population. I will bring that bill back, and I'll hope that we have a good chance of passing it next session. The big priorities of our state really have to be to address the situation we're in with the virus, because it's affecting so much. I haven't even mentioned the tens of thousands of deaths in our country, or over 200,000 deaths. And our state is now in second place among the 50 states in the number of deaths we have here in Texas. We have got to focus on the needs in our state that have been created by this pandemic, and on reducing the transmission and getting those numbers down. That's going to be a top priority in addition to the others that you mentioned.
The budget is just going to be the shortfall. How do we make sure we keep the promises of HB3 and all the different, I think, great legislation that actually was passed in the last session? And education, to me, again, I actually agree with John that health literacy and to me financial literacy are just key things that we need to ensure our kids are prepared with, and even adults are prepared with. I talked about health and wellness. I really agree that that's a great bill. I would actually lead with health, financial literacy. One of the things that as a college recruiter I realized is that sometimes when talking to kids about going to college, the first time they were hearing about a loan was when they're having a conversation with me. And I think that these are really key instruments that we need to arm our kids with when understanding just how the world works, how personally they balance the budget, how are they responsible for their own finances so they can live productive lives. So I know there have been efforts on financial literacy and that being curriculum that is at every single school, and I plan to push that forward because I think that has bipartisan support, and it's really, really important for the future of our state.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of our prepared questions. At this time, I would invite the candidates to make any closing remarks they wish to share with us in the inverse order from the opening statements, which means, John, the floor is yours for 90 seconds.
Well, thank you all so much for this opportunity. It's been great to be with you today. I've been honored to be your representative the last 2 years. I'm honored to have that opportunity for the next 2. You know, one thing we didn't really get to talk too much about today, and I'll just address it briefly, is the tone of our politics. You know, last time, and here again this time, I've campaigned on changing the tone, on focusing on a level of decency and civility and problem solving in our politics. My campaign has reflected that. By the way, if afterward you'd like to come see some of these flyers that are being sent out around me, you know, saying that I want to ban oil and gas drilling and things of that sort. In fact, I'm endorsed by the Texas Oil and Gas Association's political action committee and other things. I can show you those things. They are an example, by the way, of how our politics has been evolving. We all have to be willing to stand up against that sort of trend in politics, stand up for a greater level of decency. You know, in a TV ad I have running now, I wrote it myself, and it's on my back porch. I said I stand for several things: following science, supporting our students, teachers, and public schools, a greater level of decency in government and responsibility in government, and equal treatment under the law for every Texan. I assure you that if you give me the opportunity to go back and serve you a second time as your legislator, I'll be focused on those priorities. I will be a listener, I will continue to work hard, and I will continue to think first about this community and again about the values that I believe this club represents. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
Thank you all for just taking the time to listen to us. I know that politics can be so divisive today that just you all taking the effort and being active in your democracy in our republic, it means the world to me. Thanks, John, for sharing the stage. You're my state representative, so thank you for being here. I appreciate it because this is the level of dialogue that we need to have in order to move our country and our state forward. And I believe that just like the Dallas Morning News said in their endorsement of me, that I am the fiscal conservative and the champion for education that will really get us through some of the toughest times. I want to work with you all to find solutions for our community. I really am not an expert on a lot of things, but I know that the expertise lies within the walls and within this club and this amazing community that I get to live in and that has fully embraced me and that I have support. I'm building a big tent. I'm building support of people, not parties, not just divisive issues, but are things that unite us. And I would hope you consider me as you look at place 12 in your ballot. Again, you're going to see me there, the hardest name you can pronounce, that you will give me a chance because we need to make sure that we have people representing us that are talking about the issues that are important for this community, with the values that are important for this community. And I really believe that Texas is exceptional, that we are better together, and that there's so much we can do if we're bold in our initiatives. The other thing, since my opponent keeps bringing it up, yes, please look at the flyers. My campaign, the Luis Del Rosado campaign, has not sent or paid for negative advertising. So look at who pays for this mailers. And that's the type of rhetoric that I won't fall into. I will not do that. I will talk about records, I will talk about votes, and we were going to talk about what Texans need. So thank you so much for considering us. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. Thank you both for being here again. We really appreciate the enlightening discussion on the issues and hearing from you about your plans for your time in Austin should you be elected. As Robert makes his way up here to close us out, can we give a round of applause for
Yes, thank you all very much for being here and spending time with us this morning. We greatly appreciate it. Michael, thank you as well for leading us this morning. Shane and Brent and David, thank you all for being here. Welcome back anytime. So please reach out. We'd love to have you. Anybody else? Yes. Any other announcements? Next week, the 23rd, we've got the Youth Awards. Followed on the 30th, we have the First Responders. So those are our next two programs, always two great programs. So with that, Brett.
Our country is a fleet, sweet